I'm going to start this evening by playing a little game with you. If I told you about somebody who has been to West Africa, built a school, drilled for clean water, and installed solar panels, which of these options would be more likely? A billionaire philanthropist or a wife of one. B, a big international organization dedicated to helping the poor. Or C, a full-time working receptionist with a second job on the side. Now, I guess in terms of likelihood, option C would not score very high. But yet, here I am. To fund my work, I've arranged sold-out concerts in renowned venues around Stockholm. I've done cooperations with businesses, held lectures at universities, and other types of fundraising activities. And because of my work is 100% nonprofit, it also means I work full-time as a receptionist in Sweden. Additional to this, I also work extra as a nanny to have somewhere to stay overnight, since I rented out my apartment and now I've been more or less homeless for a year. I'm taking meetings in boardrooms and at the Swedish Ministry for Foreign Affairs talking about development. I've been called a pioneer within social entrepreneurship, and I always get the reaction like, "Oh, but you're so young." Or my favorite one, "But you're a woman." And yes, that is correct. I am a woman. And speaking in terms of likelihood, I don't score very high as a person or my NGO as an organization. And even though the Free Project has been a one-woman business in terms of management, and I'm alone on this stage here today, I want to make something very clear. There are hundreds of people involved in my work, enabling me to do this. But most of all, my colleagues in Ghana, the people I work with the most, this talk is forever dedicated to them. So there's this big existential question that has been following me for a while, and I am convinced that each and every one of you in here has asked themselves this question. Who am I? My idea is that we need to challenge this question. And a traditional way of answering the question of who am I is going back to the childhood, asking about their experiences. So I would like to introduce to you teenage rebellion Camilla. Yeah, I know. Let's just say I'm, for one, very grateful for growing up and aging. So I'm going to take you back to a very specific day in my life. I was waking up at 2 o'clock in the afternoon on a school day at home at my parents' house in the suburbs of Stockholm. I go to the mirror and I look myself in the mirror and I think that you are the most miserable person ever. You see, I come from a very common background, which I share with many others. It is the typical, my father was an alcoholic, and of course that affected me. Growing up, I was a very good girl, top grades throughout school. But when I turned 16, it got to the point of my father's alcoholism that was submitted to rehab, and my world kind of fell apart. Being codependent for many years, seeing my greatest hero crash and fall, I crashed too. I had an identity crisis. So the world felt pitch black and deep existential questions were painted everywhere. What will become of me? Who am I? Why am I so angry? I didn't feel connected to my friends who didn't know anything, see my grades drop, started to miss class. Everything I knew about myself didn't really make sense anymore. And looking at myself in the mirror, I saw a self-destructive and depressed individual. And you see, I punished myself even harder because I knew, compared to others who are suffering under much worse conditions around the world, I was just a spoiled little girl. And this became the answer to my question, who am I? Obviously, a really bad person. That day, I was so apathetic, I couldn't even bring myself to pick up my toothbrush and brush my teeth. You are a miserable waste of space. But standing there, staring at myself, something changed. A new question came to me. Okay, you hate who you are, and you're obviously not capable of this simple task. But what would the kind of person you would like to become do? So, I brushed my teeth. The big issue with the question that we all ask ourselves, who am I, is that it's impossible to answer. We are not only one thing. We aren't static. At least we're not something that can fit into a Twitter bio. We're more than one thing, above all dynamic. And the lack of answer creates a feeling of unease, stress, and rootlessness. It's changing the question from who am I to what kind of person would you like to become. I created space for change and growth. And what kind of person? That exact phrasing is important because you can be many things creating character. I left being held back by what I thought I was and stepped into my dream about tomorrow and became it. And now you might think, like, this sounds a little bit too easy, just changing a formulation and asking one question, but it has to be. Simplicity is the ultimate sophistication, Leonardo da Vinci said. Listening to the answer and act upon it is the tricky part. So this question became my mantra. After years and years of being pushed and pulled in different directions of grown-ups, I started out making active choices. In our world today, there are far too many people with far too few choices. We see inequality, injustice, and despair. On one hand, we seem to have people drowning in choices, while on the other one, people thirst for it. And that is why I started the free projects, to provide options for people without them. At 22, I funded my organization and I went to northern Ghana in West Africa. At 23, I saw kids flicking the switch of a light for the first time in their life after we installed solar panels. At 24, I built a school. And that very same year, we went from drinking this to this. And all of these that I just mentioned are a result of one trivial question asked by an insignificant girl picking up her toothbrush. And looking back, talking about all this, it sounds grand, doesn't it? Glorious. But let me tell you, it has been far from glorious. Yeah, I'm just gonna let a second to let that sink in here. 43 degrees in the shade, puking in a bucket. It's glorious. Let's go back to the question, what kind of person would you like to become? And let me give you an example what it looks like putting it into practice. We all know that education is a magical key that opens a lot of doors. So I decided I wanted to build a school. I took a meeting at the chief's palace with all the elders. We did the rituals, shared the traditional bitter cola, and discussed. And together we were gonna build a school. And I told them, the only two things I won't budge on is, number one, I want to have full control over the budget. And number two, I want to stick strictly to our time plan. Now, of course, these were the two things that failed miserably. But at least we had a plan. So we started out enthusiastically with a group of 30 people from the area, drawing the structures, digging the foundation, at the same time as we molded our own bricks. But then it all started to get to us. So apparently, the need of a school was bigger than I first had thought. 4 villages were in need, and not only one. And also, I don't know how much you know about building houses in cement, but it takes a lot of water. And I mean, a lot. And it becomes somewhat of a problem when there is a drought and you don't have any means of transportation. But I had strong colleagues, and I emphasize strong. They are the true heroes and my constant source of inspiration to keep pushing. We have shared tears, laughter, experiences, and thoughts. And with the risk of sounding too emotional or like a complete flower child, I am astounded by the love that surrounds us. From completely different parts of the world, I have not only found great friends, but fantastic coworkers. We have stood side by side through the good and the bad, and through sunshine and rain. And speaking about rain, rain actually came once, and these pictures explain better than any of my words. The divine feeling of cool droplets hitting your sunburned skin after months of working in scorching heat. And also, the water came to good use. Here's a picture of Monday. She's a mother of 3 with bigger biceps than most of the men in here, making use of what is left of the muddy rainwater. But then the rain turned to storm. We were just about finished, and I had 2 weeks before going home. And the cement and the pillars, not given enough time to dry completely, fell. And just like that, we lost several weeks of work in a heap of rubble on the ground. I was clinging to the idea of getting this goal done. Hundreds of people were depending on me. From afar, people in Sweden were watching my every step, and kids were wondering, will I get a school to attend this fall? And I failed them. I failed them all. And I remember this so clearly, sitting in my room that night, crying my eyes out, thinking, I can't do this. I can't do magic. The question of my past hit me. What kind of person would you like to become? Either the kind that takes this as failure, or the one who takes this as an opportunity to do more. So I went home. I hosted a new fundraising event. I went on Swedish television and I told them about my failed work, but that I was not giving up. Working day and night. 1 month later, I was back in Ghana, and today we have a school. But not only that, we also drilled a borehole, making up for the drought that had haunted us for months. After hours and hours of staring at that drill going deeper into the ground, we saw water erupt. Drinking water. Later that night, under the stars, my colleague Joshua turned to me and he said, "Thank God for bringing us water." And I looked at him and I whispered, "I don't think God brought you this water. Hard work did." And then we fell asleep right then and there, tired but grateful. To quote my favorite author, Paulo Coelho, straight roads does not make skillful drivers. And I would say life taught me to drive. It also taught me that a bump in the road is nothing to fear. It is merely a speed bump for you to slow down, gather your strengths, and do more. What kind of person would you like to become? It puts you in a constant state of transformation. So now I stand in front of a new challenge. In about 2 weeks, I'm going back to Ghana, not only to install solar panels on the school and building a biogas prototype with 2 ambassadors from Engineers Without Borders, but I'm also trying out a new concept where I can focus on women empowerment, creating self-sustainability on a grassroots level. You might ask, how will I do this? Simple. Beekeeping. My journey started out as a troubled teenager with emotional baggage, fighting my way onto the nonprofit arena, ending up working in one of the poorest areas of the world, seeing trauma, violence, and injustice. And it might strike you as somewhat narcissistic to give a speech with your entire life as the main theme. But I merely wanted to give you a naked truth to expose the vulnerability that we all share. I strive for transparency, and sharing my thoughts and lessons of life is pretty scary. Can you even imagine the commentary field of this speech on YouTube? People will always judge and always have opinions, and with every right. You see, I am sure to fail again and again. I am sure to make mistakes and ungracious nosedives into unknown waters. But that's okay. Because today when I ask myself, Camilla, what kind of person would you like to become? This is the answer. I want to be the kind of person that shows no fear to fail. I want to be the kind of person that learns what she does not know and builds what does not yet exist. I want to show that we might not be able to save the world on our own, but together we can change lives. But really, I just came here today to ask you one simple question. What kind of person would you like to become? Thank you.